Welcome back to my humble abode. Maybe one day I'll show off more of it than this, but this is all you get to see right now. So, Chapter 5 Communication Conflict Style. We all have a style. What's your go to style? You might be surprised by the time this chapter's over that you have more than one style. And you might find out that your style isn't what you thought it was. So let's talk about it. Style is created over a lifetime. I once wrote a paper on standpoint theory. And in my paper, I talked about how you are created over time by the different things that affect you, much like a rubber band ball. Each rubber band represents a different aspect of your life that have caused you to be a certain way. It's created you culturally. And as we mentioned in the last chapter, conflict styles are culturally dependent. You know, how you were raised, what culture you were raised in, not necessarily, United States versus China, but the South versus the North versus the West versus the military. My kids grew up in a military culture. I did too. it creates who we are and how we handle different situations. Now, the book talks about 5 different communication styles. And what you have to understand is they're situational. And we'll go into a little bit more depth a little further, but think about it. You do not handle conflict with your parents the same way you do with your siblings or your friends. You do not handle conflict the same with one boss as opposed to another boss, or your significant other as opposed to somebody you're just dating. So it's situational. Now, the 5 different types to talk about are obliging, and there's a chart, second or third page of the chapter talks about this. That obliging is you are more concerned about others than you are yourself. You want to make sure that the situation is good. It's on page 153, by the way. Avoiding, you really don't care about your feelings. You don't care about their feelings. You just don't want to deal with it. Dominating, it's all about your concerns. To hell with everybody else's. Integrating, it's a plus for you and a plus for others. It seems to be the best way to resolve any conflict. But there's some problems with that we'll talk about. And compromising. We always hear about compromising. And compromising is right smack dab in the middle of the chart. And it's basically a win-lose situation. Neither one of you get everything you want. Neither one of you loses everything you want. The difference between compromising and integrating is integrating, you both realize that this goal is what we need to work for. And you're both satisfied with the results of that goal because it's what you want as a cohesive group, shall we say, as opposed to, well, it's kind of like what I wanted, but it's not really what I wanted. We hear often that Congress should compromise. And I don't really think they should compromise. I think they should integrate. I think that there should be a way, as there was in the past, for them to see both sides of it and come to the best decision for us as opposed to the best decision for their party. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Maybe for a little while. So how do you assess your styles? Well, there is a quiz, shall we say, in the book called Application 5.1. It's on page 154, or starts on 154. And I've taken this in the past in different classes that I've had. And the first time I took it, I wasn't really given any direction. And I noticed that I kept changing my scenario. Well, this is how I deal with conflict with my kids, and this is how I deal with my wife, this is how I deal with one of our soldiers. And this one gets pretty explicit. Actually, they want you to pick two distinct and different conflicts. And they want you to rate each of them. And the hard thing in taking this quiz, because it's 25 questions, is maintaining that thought in your mind, that particular scenario, especially going back and forth, because they want you to do too. How am I at, we'll look at the first one. I avoid being put on the spot. I keep conflicts to myself. Well, it depends on what scenario you choose. It could be dependent upon how you answer that. Now, one other interesting thing that I want you to complete this application. Now, the other thing it suggests is get two people you know that are you're good friends with, that you're not going to have a conflict with afterwards, to fill this out on their perception of you. And then see where the chips fall, I guess we could say. Okay, avoid or engage. You can avoid conflict, or you can engage in it. Now, what's both can work, you know. They really can. If somebody that you are very close to wants to have pizza for dinner, and you really don't care, you don't really want pizza, but you don't care, you know, I just want to eat, you know. I don't really care for pizza. I had it for lunch, but, you know, I don't care. That can be beneficial to the relationship. Or you can say, you know, I've had pizza every night this week for the last week, you know, I don't want pizza. And then you can engage in it. Both of those can work. Avoidance or engagement can work. Now, avoidance, there's different ways we avoid a topic. Denial. Act like they didn't ask. My wife accuses me of having selective hearing. She says that genetic deficiency that all men have. We hear what we want to hear. So, you know, you can act like you didn't hear it. You can deny it. Oh, I didn't hear it. Don't worry about it. Not a problem with me. You can change the topic. You can start joking. You know, pizza again, come on. You know, we had pizza the other night. Or you can be non-committal. Whatever you want. Or you can withdraw. There's different ways you can avoid. Now, avoidance has some advantages and some disadvantages. Well, let's say it's actually a very important topic, but you know you got a final tomorrow, and you have this going on or that going on. It's like, you know, we need to talk about this, but I don't want to talk right now, so I'll avoid it. So it gives you time to think. It can also serve as a means of self-preservation, especially in some physical, shall we say, relationships. Let's see, I can voice my opinion, and he can hit me, or I can voice my opinion and she can hit me, or I can just say whatever, you know, no problem. And sometimes it's just not worth the argument. If the goal is to have dinner, and you really don't care where you have it at, you know, having an argument is just not worth the conflict. So what else do we know about this stuff? Well, there's disadvantages. Cultural apathy. My phone is making noise. It turned off here. Or you may signal apathy. I apologize. I have my glasses on. You know, if you're avoiding it, you may just seem like you don't care. It may be that you don't care, and maybe you need time to think. It could give somebody the impression that you're stubborn. Or it could allow the conflict to simmer and manifest itself in something bigger later. Now, we talked earlier about cultural influence and collectivistic versus individualistic cultures often have different perspectives of avoidance. It could be a way of saving face, your face or their face. If you are in a collectivistic culture where, you know, when we were little, it was, you don't talk back to your elders, respect your elders. And now you're an adult. So, and now it's kind of okay to say something to an elder. But in some collectivistic cultures, it's not. And so you could be saving their face or your face if you avoid. It could be to maintain civility. Yeah, especially in public. A lot of cultural perspectives is, you don't air your dirty laundry in public. And that goes for either individualistic or collectivistic. I grew up a lot of times in the South. I lived in New England some, and in Texas some. But, there's certain things you didn't do in public. So you did not have an argument in public. It's not as culturally taboo now as it used to be, but there are still some people that very much feel that way. Or it could be for spiritual or philosophical reasons. Why you respect this person, or this person has a high position that you don't want to put them on the spot. It could be your preacher, and okay, well, spiritually he's supposed to be the leader of the church, and I don't agree. I'll go find another church. There's also what they call the avoid, criticize loop. And this is something I have seen people do time and time again. Get in we're going to call them conflicts in this class. Get into conflict with a significant other or boss, and then go back and fuss at your friends or your coworkers and talk about them, And I've done it with my wife. I'm sure she's done it with me. Damn, why can't she understand? She's just so hard-headed. Well, she may not be hard-headed. She just may not feel that way about that particular item. So it can make you look petty. I mean, think about how many times you've had somebody get into avoid an argument with somebody, but they come back and they tell you all about it. Now, sometimes it's your best friend, and you got to have their back. But other times, it may be your best friend, but you still look at them and go, there's more things to worry about. Why are you doing this? It can get back to the boss. If you're at work and you disagree with the boss, but you avoid the conflict, and you go back, but the worst manager I've ever had. It can get back to the boss, and it can come back and bite you in the butt. And it can increase the conflict. Okay, that's how they feel about me. I'll show them what I can do. There are different avoidance strategies. The silent treatment. I've had that many times in my life. I really have. Oftentimes, I kid now because I'm blind, and nonverbal communication doesn't mean the same to me as it did used to, or as it does most of you. Many of you that have a significant other, your significant other has the quote look. You know, the look, meaning, come here, baby, I want you, or stay the hell away from me, don't talk to me. I can't see, so I don't know which look I'm getting. But usually I can tell by other things, okay? So the silent treatment, deflecting, and being abstract. Well, it's up to you. It doesn't matter to me. Well, if you say so. Leaving, walking out. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to leave, and I'm not saying it's right not to leave. Sometimes a little bit of space is the best thing you can do in a conflict. Change the mood or subject. Any of you been in a conflict and it's like, I'm going to change the subject here? Or giving irrelevant information. If the conflict is about paying the bills, talking about what's on TV tonight really doesn't help. Postponement. Now, postponement could be a good thing. That goes back to kind of leaving, but you don't want to just storm out or leave unannounced. But if you need to postpone the argument, let's go back to that. You're all college students. Let's go back to, I got a final tomorrow. I got a final tomorrow. And honey, I really love you and I really care about our relationship. I just can't talk about this right now. But I promise tomorrow after my test, we will talk about this. So don't be vague. Don't say, well, we'll talk about it sometime in the future, or we'll talk about it later. So, tomorrow after my test is done. Acknowledge why it's important to them. I know this is important to you. We've got to get these bills under control. We have to do this. And keep your word. If you postpone the conflict because something else is pressing, and let's admit it, life is pressing. We all have something going on. But sometimes you have to set your priorities. And my wife would many times want to talk to me at 2 o'clock in the morning when I had to get up and go to work the next day. Or I had to deploy the next day. She had to get this figured out before I left. and it was like, I don't want to talk right now. I wish I'd have read this chapter back then. It might have made things a little easier on me. But, don't just be able to talk about it later. Let them know what's going on. Let them you understand how important it is to them. But keep your word. If you say we're going to talk about it tomorrow afternoon, then talk about it tomorrow afternoon. Don't find another way to postpone it tomorrow afternoon. Dominating. Dominating is generally aggressive and uncooperative behavior. We don't know anybody like that, do we? Of course we do. Where my concern matters and yours doesn't. Now, we all grew up, or most of us grew up, I should say, in a household, and we had a parent or two around. And generally, the parents dominate. That's what they do. My mother's favorite line was, because I said so. Okay. She's 92, and I'm still afraid of her. But at times, there are advantages to domination. As a parent, when you have children that, may not understand the danger, being dominant is like, I said so, that's why. No, you cannot ride standing up on the hood of the car. Put your seatbelt on. That's not really an emergency, but it's a time when somebody that has the knowledge needs to take control. Emergencies. It's very important sometimes to have it's very important to have a dominant person in control if they know what they're doing. Now, if the dominant person says, well, let's watch them for 5 minutes and see if they get up. No, I'm going to call 911. No, we're not doing it. No, you don't, you want somebody in an emergency situation that has the knowledge to take control. And it is the goal, the most important thing. Going back to that being a child and wanting to ride on surf on the hood of the car. The goal for your parents is to keep you alive. That's the most important thing. If you are dominant about things, it generally shows your commitment. I'm really committed to this situation, and so the dominant person a lot of times shows their commitment through how in charge they are and how powerful they are and how important it is to them. The disadvantage, it can harm relationships. Going back to your childhood, there's a lot of things that you knew you were ready to do and your parents didn't think you were. It didn't help the relationship. There's a section in the book about a girl and her dad and stepmom, and she left because he was so dominant. But when she went to her mom's, she didn't know how to have a mom-daughter relationship. She left there too. So it can harm a relationship. It can cause covert responses. What do I mean by that? Well, it can cause somebody to go behind your back. I'm dominant. This is the way we're going to do it. And that person that works for you that hates the way you are, that hates you being dominant, goes to your boss, or goes to HR, or goes to the newspaper. Threats are used throughout societies. And there's two things you have to have for a threat to be valid. You have to have a source of control, and you have to have a negative sanction. As a parent, the book uses a decent example. You can tell your kid, go to his room. All right, you don't want to do your chores? Go to your room. Well, most of my grandkids have a TV and a computer and their phone in their room. And they're going, okay, I'll go. If you really want me to, I'll go. Sometimes they put a show on about how terrible it is. They got to go to the room. They're in there playing on their phone. They're watching TV. They're on the computer. So they're making go to the room. It doesn't have a negative sanction. Destructive domination. It's win or lose. And most of the time, that's not good. Most of the time, everybody wants to win. But when one person is in charge and they use domination in a destructive way, they're going to win. Everybody else is going to lose. To hell with them. One-up escalation. Okay, you want to be that way? I'll be this way. And the book makes a point of talking about alcohol and or other influence of other substances. It always makes it worse. Have you ever seen a good argument come out of a bar? Well, some probably ain't old enough to drink, but you probably have anyway. So usually when somebody's under the influence, it makes it a lot worse. Verbal aggressiveness and abuse. Character attacks. Insults. Teasing. Ridicule. I added bullying here, although the chapter talks about it later on. And if it's a collectivist group, the insults toward their tribe or their community are much worse than to them. So, all these things are bad and make conflict worse, and it's more destructive. And in many cases, verbal aggression precedes physical aggression. If you see a couple and they are always, or one of them is always verbally bullying the other one, a good chance that will turn into physical aggression at some point in time. Coercive control, intimate partner violence. You're going to have the house clean, and you're going to have the laundry done, and you're going to have my food on the table when I get home. And if not, then I'm not going to give you money for this, that, or the other, or I'm going to physically manhandle you or I'm going to harm you. I'm in charge. I'm dominant. What I say goes, and by any means necessary. And there's also a virtual aspect to it. A lot of times, the coercive control, you grab this simple little device that we all seem to be tethered to nowadays, and you coerce your significant other or somebody via technology. Compromise. I always thought until I started taking these classes that compromise was the best thing in the world. Some win and some lose. Some wins and some losses for everybody. And in theory, it kind of sounds good because, nobody really loses everything. But nobody really wins. Now, there are some advantages. Compromise takes much less time. It can be a backup for decisions. If we compromise and go flip a coin, okay. I want to pay you $2,000 for your car. You want $2,500. Well, we'll flip a coin because I really want the car and you really want to sell it, but we don't want to meet at $250. So we flip a coin. Well, I lose. Well, I got the car and you got the money you wanted, but it wasn't really, fair. It just less time is expended. You don't have to go back and forth as much, but it can be a backup for decisions. Disadvantages, the easy way out. And it prevents creative new options. The thing about conflict management, the best thing that you can do is find new ways to get everybody what they want. And they talk a little bit about arbitration. Arbitration is not a compromise. If you draw straws or pick a number, the arbitrator is the method, but it's not a compromise. This is the way it is. Tough it. If you don't like it, then don't play the game. Obliging. Obliging is a combination. When you oblige, you focus on somebody else's needs and concerns, not yours. It's actually one of the most common styles of conflict management or resolution, to be obliging. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about having, what are you going to have for dinner? Well, I really don't want this, but okay, we can have that. The advantage, if it doesn't matter to you, obliging is great. It can also be self-protection, much like avoidance can be. If I don't oblige you, you might get physical with me. So, okay, yeah, we'll do it your way. Disadvantages. It can lead to competitiveness. No, you go. No, you go. Have you seen that commercial where two people are at a stop sign? And it's like, no, after you, after you. No, no, after you, after you. You both want to be the bigger man, so to speak. And it can actually create competitiveness between two people trying to oblige the other one. And once again, it reduces the competitive options. Integrating. Integrating is a collaborative process. We don't compromise. We don't demand. We don't avoid. We don't oblige. It's like, okay, this is where we want to be. How do we get there? The goal is the most important thing. The goal is what we're interested in. I'm not interested in getting a medal. I'm not interested in getting a letter of appreciation, although it'd be nice. I was in the Army. If you got a letter of appreciation or a medal, you got promotion points. And so, it meant a lot to get a letter or get a medal because you got promotion points and you can get promoted. But what's the goal? Well, the goal is to help in this earthquake. The goal is to set up a perimeter and protect everything in it. The goal is to create freedom. The goal is to, on one of the humanitarian missions, distribute medical equipment. We had mothballed medical equipment we brought to former Soviet bloc countries. So, the concern is for the goal, not for you as a person. Both parties are reasonably satisfied. Now, as compared to compromise, oftentimes you feel like you lost even though you won something. Whereas in collaboration, you both reasonably feel satisfied. We worked together to get the best thing we could for the goal. The advantages, satisfy all parties. Generate new ideas. That's one of the greatest things about a good collaboration is that you find new ways to do things. You show respect for the other person and yourself. And you affirm the importance of the relationship. If you don't care about the relationship, then domineering can be a great way to go. I'm going to get my damn way because I don't care about the relationship. But if the relationship's important to you, then being collaborative can be a good way to do it. The disadvantages, what you eventually come up with may not be worth the time you put into it. Because let's be honest, as compared to the other methods, other styles, collaboration takes some work and it takes some time. If you truly want this goal, one of the first things you have to do is figure out what that goal is. And oftentimes what started the conversation isn't really the goal that you end up with. So disadvantages may not be worth the time. You can be manipulated. You can be manipulative, or they can be manipulative. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're really good at talking and they're not, you can make it sound like you're collaborating with them and make it sound that look, this is great for you too, and da 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 da. Yeah, are you a good salesman? Have you bought a car recently? They tend to be very manipulative, and they make it look so much like they're working with you to get the best deal. And I apologize if you're finding a class as a car salesperson. Not all of you that way, but the stereotypical thing. So cautions about different styles. Like we said earlier, they're culturally dependent. If you are dealing with a culture that does not appreciate a competitive style or a dominant style, then you could be at a great disadvantage. What we self-report looks good. Now, there is a thing later in the book that talks about that study I told you to complete, the 25-question study. And it goes into a little more honesty about it. And self-reporting, we tend to look good. Are you honestly filling that out, how you truly feel? Or are you writing down what you think I want to hear? or whomever else is giving the survey. That's the problem with people filling out surveys. What we self, because when I think about me, I don't really think I'm that bad of a guy. I think that I'm pretty integrative, and I'm pretty collaborative. I can deal with I'm generally not dominant. Um, I can be obliging often because, what's important to other people is important to me. You have my wife fill it out about me, she might tell you I'm a complete asshole. So, what we self-report looks good. What we see others as, and this was mentioned in a couple of the chapters, is if you're in a conflict with somebody, you generally see that you're good and they're bad. I'm right and they're wrong. So, they may be a great obliging person and I might be a great obliging person, but neither one of us is ever going to get through that intersection. Different people and situations call for different styles. I mentioned that earlier. You handle conflict with different people different ways. If you feel threatened by somebody and you know that you're no match for them, you're going to handle it differently than if somebody feels threatened by you and they're no match for you. So, it's great to say, okay, we have all these different styles and we can handle conflict different ways, but it's situational, it's dynamic. Even if it starts this way, it might progress to something else. And how we handle that changes how the outcome of the conflict resolution is going to be. So, book next talks about beyond styles violence. Well, violence, I'll go out on a limb and say never a good thing. I was in the Army for 20 years, okay? Sometimes it comes down to you've got to treat violence with violence. Ukraine and Russia right now is a perfect example. But we're talking about something interpersonal here, not international. Beyond the verbal abuse and threats, throwing. And the book has this list of stuff. Do you do this stuff or have you done this stuff? Throwing, hitting, breaking. It's how aggressive are you in these arguments? Have I always been the calm and cool and collected person you see sitting before you now that's reasonable? Yeah, I have. Trust me. No, I haven't. I've had my days. I never got violent to a point where I touched anyone. And I didn't throw things and break things, but I got angry and hit the wall, things like that. There's some people that I hit, I didn't hit her, I hit the wall, so I'm good. Well, not really. In your mind, you may think you are, but not really. And violence is pervasive in society. Physical aggression is usually preceded by verbal aggression. Usually. What's that mean? Well, if somebody is verbally aggressive to the person they're in a conflict with, it can often lead to physical aggression. Intimate violence is usually reciprocated. You hear all the time, my wife loves to watch those cops and things like that. And, the domestic violence, and the cops show up, and he hit me, and she hit me, and yeah, well, they're both going to jail. So a lot of times, it's not just the person that started it. It's usually reciprocated. Women and children suffer more injuries in domestic violence. Victims are in a no-win situation. A lot of people say, well, why don't they just leave? A lot of times they don't think they can leave. Perpetrators and victims see things differently. How many times have you heard that? Well, she made me do it. I don't know what happened. Well, he did this. Yeah, a lot of times they don't. You ever heard that to a divorce there's three stories? Her side, his side, the truth. Um, and that's what it is in these situations as well. Because and you know I'm blind and I have tunnel vision, and I use this reference occasionally. They each have tunnel vision. They're seeing things from their standpoint. This is how things happen. And a lot of times the things in the periphery changes your perception of stuff. Somebody from the outside could see something completely different than the two of them did. The book talks about explanations for violence. And I don't think anybody ever will ever have a true explanation for violence in all scenarios. But the things they talk about are it's learned. Some people break the chain, and some start it. Okay, well that just took care of the learned thing. Um, but a lot of the reasons they really don't know. So what else do they have to say about it? Interaction dynamics. Oh, wait a minute. Skipped a part. One of the problems that we have is we live in a patriarchal society. Well, what does that mean? That means that I'm the man of the house and what I say goes. It's not as patriarchal as it used to be. I had an aunt that her and her husband were married for 60 something years before he passed away. And back in the day, my mom told me after he'd passed away, that he used to beat her. And I said, why didn't she leave? She said she had nowhere to go, especially back in that day. This was like the mid 1900s. But her solution was that one night when he got drunk and came home and beat the hell out of her, he passed out. She sewed him into bed sheets, and when he woke up the next morning, she beat him with a cast iron skillet and told him if he ever touched her again, that she'd do more than that. And he changed his ways after that. But I'm not advocating that to any of you. But patriarchal society, Hong Kong's got a patriarchal society, but they don't have as much intimate violence as we do. So that's not the only reason. Lack of communication skills. Well, let's see. That could be. A lot of people say, well, the reason I got a divorce is lack of communication. Actually, more people get a divorce over finances than anything else, but even infidelity. But having poor communication skills can definitely lead to a rise in conflict and a rise in aggression. Then the book goes on to say we really don't know everything, but it does talk about alcohol, drugs, mental illness, etc. There's all kinds of things that lead to violence, and we don't know what exactly everything is. So we can look at each situation and kind of get to the root of it, but we'll never know all the details. Interaction dynamics. Both parties have to be interested in a solution. You can have the greatest conflict resolution person in the world trying to fix something. But if there is no concern for the other from the other party, it's not going to get fixed. Tactics are often based on the other. What do I mean by that? It's what we talked about a couple of chapters ago. When I get into a conflict with somebody, I base what I do on what they do, how they act. on are they seemingly willing to work, or are they dominant? It's going to be their way. So, what tactics are we dealing with here? Joint avoidance actually can be very functional if you both want to avoid the conflict and it really doesn't matter that much. Then hey, it can be great. You know, my wife wants the toilet paper put on the roll a certain way, over the top. I don't care. But we had arguments over that. We had conflicts because I put it on there wrong. Um, if we both had avoided it, if she'd have dealt with it like she found it, and I'd have dealt with it like I found it, then that would have been fine. So joint avoidance can be functional. Either complementary patterns or symmetrical patterns can reinforce escalation. What do I mean by that? Well, she wants to talk about it and I don't. The more she wants to talk about it, the more I don't want to talk about it. And the more she pushes to talk about it, the more I'm going to push to avoid it and not talk about it. So that's a complementary pattern that can escalate. Symmetrical patterns, the same pattern. Obliging, like I mentioned earlier with the car intersection. No, you go. No, you go. No, you go. No, you go. Or it's a comedy routine. I'm sure you've seen 100 times on TV. Somebody gets to a door. Oh, after you. Oh, after you. And then they both try to go through the door at the same time. Collaborative, integrative tactics benefit everybody. They really do. They take more time. They're more time consuming. It's more thoughtful. But the goal is the goal, not you or me winning. It's the goal. This is what's best for everybody. Flexibility creates constructive conflict. What do they mean by that? Well, what they mean is if you have one conflict style, and that's it, then you're not going to be real constructive. Doing the same thing again and again won't change the results. How many times have you seen somebody do the same thing over and over, trying to get different results? It's not going to happen. So are you stuck with your particular style? Or I don't want to say your style, your go-to style. Because, I think honestly, we all have more than one style, depending upon the situation. Although I have seen some kids that were demanding with their parents, dominant with their parents. I want this car. No, you're not going to get it. Too bad, baby. They get a car. But is your go-to style the only one that feels natural to you? Is the one that you like to use the most, the only one that really feels good? Is your style the same over a number of different conflicts? Do you have a preset response pattern? Well, she's going to say this, and I'm going to say this. She's going to say this, and I'm going to say this. She's going to say this, and I'm going to say this. It don't always happen that way. But do you make it happen that way? Instead of listening to what they're saying and trying to understand them, are you planning your next response because you know what happened last time? This is what I'm going to say. Do others seem to do the same thing with you when you have a conflict? If so, then you may be stuck in a particular pattern. Rhetorical sensitivity. You have to be comfortable with changing. You have to be adaptable. Can you adapt to the situation? If you're comfortable changing from obligatory to compromise to avoiding, great. Can you adapt to the situation? As soon as you find out that this is so important to the other person for reasons you did not know? Can you change? Or, hell no, my way or the highway. Have a large skill set. You gotta have a toolbox to build a house. You can't build a house with just a screwdriver. So you gotta have more tools in your box. Instead of whining about everything, do you present things that can solve the problem? When it comes your turn to talk, do you have a solution or do you have another complaint? Can you be rational? As you can see, there's not a panacea style for every situation or person. You need different skills to be a good conflict resolution person, manager. You need to be good at it. You got to have different skill sets. And you got to know when to use them. You know, a rational person, knowing when to bring this tool out and that tool out, knowing when to back off, knowing when to avoid, knowing when to postpone. All those things are important. So that's conflict resolution. That will be the last chapter we cover before the midterm. The midterm will be in 2 weeks. Next week you will have, I'll post a video explaining the midterm a little bit more and probably have a discussion for you. I don't know if it will or not. But make sure you make your discussions, make sure you comment on your peers, and do your discussions by Thursday so everybody has something to write about. The reason I said that, or set that up that way, is before I just said, have everything you're done by Sunday. And everybody would comment Sunday, and half the people wouldn't have it. I mean, they got on there, there's Tuesday. They'd have to wait till Sunday night at 8 o'clock for enough people to have responded for them to read something and comment. So it's not just for my convenience, it's for yours. So far, I hope everything's going well. Any questions you have, feel free to email me, and we will get them answered. Other than that, have a great week.